want to take a quick second to thank this video's sponsor, The Motley Fool. Go to fool.com/rive to get their top 10 stock picks to buy right now. One of the autonomous driving leaders that we don't give a lot of attention to is General Motors. And I want to get into why they have actually made some really brilliant moves to get into autonomous driving and maybe a leader in the space. Most of what General Motors has done is through a company called Cruise, which they acquired in 2016. GM has actually very intentionally kept Cruise a little bit at arm's length. And I think that's an interesting way to think about this business because they're actually trying to disrupt their core business model. I'll get to exactly what Cruise does in a second, but I think this is really telling. This is the permit holders for deploying autonomous driving vehicles with no safety driver in the state of California. There are only 3 companies that are allowed to do this right now: Cruise, Nuro, and Waymo, which is part of Alphabet. You'll notice that Tesla is not on this list. They actually don't even hold a permit for driverless testing at this point. So from that standpoint alone, Cruise is actually one of the leaders in autonomous driving. So Cruise actually has vehicles in the field in San Francisco, and customers can sign up and actually take a ride in a vehicle that has no driver today. These are retrofitted vehicles currently, but you can see here that Cruise is actually developing a vehicle called the Origin, which GM is manufacturing, and they're expecting to launch in 2023. This will be a ride-sharing specific vehicle, no driver. It's kind of like a combination between an Uber and a bus. You can see that the doors open here, sliding doors, so it's like double doors, and then people can get in and sit like they would in any other ride-sharing vehicle. Cruise is also looking at using their vehicles for delivery, which I think is really interesting because I think this will be a focus of some of these autonomous vehicles in the future. That's what Nuro's doing. You can imagine companies like DoorDash or Uber Eats, instead of having drivers drive around and drop food or groceries at your door, there's actually a autonomous vehicle that drives around. Over the next few years, Cruise is going to be launching a bigger fleet of vehicles that will be these Cruise Origin vehicles. And GM owning 80% of Cruise is going to benefit from that upside. But what they've really done is they've made themselves a third-party manufacturer. And I think that's really an interesting piece of this business model. So Cruise is a completely separate company, and then GM is going to contract manufacture their vehicles. So GM is getting demand for their factories and selling those vehicles into Cruise. Cruise doesn't have to invest in building out factories itself. It can lean on the parent company to do that. This way, as we have more and more autonomous vehicles on the road and potentially disrupt vehicle ownership, GM can actually disrupt its own business through owning Cruise, which is a really unique way of thinking about this kind of business. Now, we're likely a few years away from Cruise vehicles being widely used across the country, but remember, it only took about a decade for Uber to go from being this black car only service to there being Ubers all over the world and it becoming a verb for users. If autonomous driving and self-driving ride sharing becomes the future of transportation, Cruise could really be one of those winners, and GM has a lot of upside if that happens. The stock currently has a market cap of about $60 billion. Compare that to Tesla, which has a market cap of $850 billion. I actually like Cruise's strategy and therefore GM's strategy in the autonomous driving space better than what Tesla is doing at this point. And given the much, much lower valuation, there's just a ton more upside for investors. If you're interested in autonomous driving and the future of ride sharing, GM is actually a company that you should consider through their ownership of Cruise. That's why I own the stock. And I think this is a company that is really underappreciated by investors right now.